created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And let there be light. And there was, and God divided the darkness.
And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first day.
It is Christmas Eve. Borman, Lovell, and Anders circle the moon. It is the greatest voyage of discovery in the history of man, taking them 231,000 miles from Earth. And their thoughts turn to the creation.
And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas. And God saw that it was good.
We stand on the threshold of a great new age of exploration. Its ultimate destination, the furthest reaches of the universe. Its goal, the innermost secrets of the cosmos, the key to the very creation of that universe. Unthinkable? Perhaps. But only a dozen short years ago, it had been unthinkable that man would ever orbit around Earth or circumnavigate the moon, let alone land on it. What has happened in the decade of the 60s has been so incredible. Come with us then and observe the views from space, of the Earth and the moon and beyond. What is in the heavens? Who is in the heavens? For 1,000 millennia, man could not hope to know, for he was imprisoned on a tiny dot on a distant edge of a minor galaxy in a universe of unknown vastness. Then came Sputnik. In a single moment, man had reached into the heavens. In the scant dozen years since Sputnik, man has gone to the moon, seen it in its starkness, and described it.
Actually, I think the best way to describe this area is a vastness of black and white. Absolutely no color.
The moon looks a very whitish gray, like dirty big sand, and with lots of footprints in it.
You know what these new craters look like? Pickaxes striking concrete, leaving a lot of fine haze dust.
And there was one heavenly body no man had ever seen before in all its majesty, for he had never left it. The Earth. Now that man is preparing to leave his Earth for the solar system, a new breed of explorer is being trained. Scientists. Among the first of this new breed who will establish scientific stations on the moon and beyond is Dr. Harrison Schmitt, a geologist. Now, geologist Jack Schmitt awaits the challenge of the moon.
For a geologist, or actually for any scientist, or even any person with a proper training to get his hands on this thing, we are actually having a chance to handle, to study, to read a record of the Earth's past, which we have no chance to see in the Earth.
The challenge of space for Americans was voiced in 1961 by President Kennedy.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth.
President Kennedy's challenge and dream will undoubtedly be met, but the cost has been staggering. $36 billion in 1 decade, involving the imagination and dedication of more than 250,000 men, and the lives of 3, Grissom, Chaffee, and White, who died in a tragic fire caught in a capsule on its pad while training for an Apollo mission. From these sacrifices in treasure and blood were to come a new perspective of our Earth and beyond. We will view this new perspective as our astronauts have viewed it. In space, a complete orbit around Earth requires some 90 minutes. Our voyage of about an hour will follow this route. Across the Atlantic, through the Mediterranean basin and North Africa to the Nile and the Middle East, into Asia at Iran, over India and the Himalayas to China, across China to the Pacific, and via the Hawaiian Islands back to the United States. In space, our earthbound concepts have no meaning. Time, night, day, even up and down as we pitch, roll, and yaw. In space, all is silent. We are far above the roar of storms and ocean. We are 60 miles up now. Below, the hazardous, light-colored reefs of the Bahamas, where Columbus searched for his new world in the faith that the Earth was round. See how the generations pass, like sand through heaven's blue hourglass. We fly over Cuba and Guantanamo Bay, site of the American naval outpost. Past the steep, dark mountains of Haiti now, where Columbus touched land in 1492. Below, the Canary Islands, once thought to be at the end of the flat world, and ahead, our first continent, Africa. On the main Canary Island, a 12,000-foot volcano is seemingly lost from 100 miles up. Gibraltar, in a funnel of clouds, gateway to the Mediterranean Sea, with Spain, Portugal, and France on the left, and Italy in the distance. The heartland of Western civilization in a single view, fulfilling a dream of Socrates. We who inhabit the earth dwell like frogs at the bottom of a pool. Only if man could rise above the summit of the air could he behold the true earth. The northwest coast of Africa, great continent where man became man a short 1,000,000 years ago. And now from the edge of the Mediterranean springs the true desert, the vast Sahara. This is almost all of the Kingdom of Libya, 680,000 square miles of North Africa. Captain Lovell remembers the Sahara.
For miles and miles, that's all you could see were the sand dunes. And the way that the wind had put the dunes in a particular orientation, it was quite an amazing sight. This gives you a good idea of why the geologists like to get pictures from space, because it gives them a complete overview of the ground, the terrain, and it shows them things that airplanes or just ground observation just doesn't give.
Below the prize of many conquerors, the vast triangle of the Nile Delta, its lush, irrigated land dark against the desert sands. 90% of the United Arab Republic lives in this maze of branches from the mighty Nile. History has traveled these waterways. Here, Joseph prophesied the 7 fat years and the 7 lean. And here at the river's edge, Moses was found, and from here he fled. Cleopatra and the pharaohs ruled over this delta. Cairo, a gray blotch at the narrowing of the delta. 4 million people live there. Up from Cairo, we can see the Middle East, cradle of 3 religions. In one panoramic view, Egypt on the left, the Sinai Peninsula on the right. Israel, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, Turkey, and Cyprus.
I gave this picture to a Israeli officer some time ago, and at the time I told him it was an oblique shot of Israel, and now it's an overhead shot.
That's right, the real estate has changed hands.
The Sinai Peninsula, a wedge of desert between Egypt and the Holy Land. This was the wilderness where the Israelites wandered for 40 years, and where Joseph and Mary took flight into Egypt with the infant Jesus. And now from Cairo, up the historic Nile. Time is a river of passing events, said Marcus Aurelius, and strong is its current. No sooner is a thing brought to sight than it is swept by, and another takes its place, and this too will be swept away.
Would you believe the Red Sea?
The Red Sea?
Yeah.
Right now, we're viewing the Red Sea.
Upside down, you can see
Upside
it.
down? Well, the spacecraft is upside down, but the world is upside up. Right side up.
Along the Red Sea, Africa is on our right and Arabia on our left. Once in a small spot along the coast was the kingdom of Sheba, whose legendary queen traveled for months northward to Jerusalem and King Solomon. From space, most of her route is seen in one glance. But it is more than beauty and history that man's new views from space reveal. From them are coming new visions of what our future can be. At the Department of the Interior in Washington, Gemini, Apollo, and unmanned satellite pictures are being studied to see just how much they can uncover of future sources of raw material and food for man. The director of the Geological Survey's Earth Resources Programs is Dr. William Fisher.
You know, we've looked at many, many ways in which space would help us just as a nation. And I'm convinced that the greatest benefit of all will come in the educational field. And I often like to think about this very famous Gemini shot of the Nile Delta and recall that when I first saw this picture of the Nile Delta, I couldn't help but be struck with the thought, I didn't know it looked that way. The city of Cairo can be easily seen in the lower part, and the major transportation networks throughout the Delta. Of particular interest, however, are the myriad of villages within the Delta that appear as gray spots. On this map, each of these villages has been identified, and there are over 1,000 villages seen in this one picture. One of the most important pictures obtained in the early Gemini flights was a picture of a part of the Arabian continent near the Gulf of Oman. A geologist looked at it, and within a matter of hours, he had created really a very fine geologic map of the area, identifying the different rock types, showing those areas that were covered with drifting sand and would be not amenable really to modern exploration techniques. And by golly, every Gemini photograph that we've looked at has given us information which we think will accelerate our discovery of natural resources.
Already, the views from space are revealing things man never saw before. For years, photogeologists like William Trollinger of Denver have searched for oil and gas deposits by piecing together aerial photographs. But with space pictures, Trollinger can see what hundreds of photos from airplanes could not capture. 4 pictures made on Gemini and Apollo flights have covered most of a vast area of West Texas and New Mexico, known as the Delaware Basin. And surprisingly, traces of the deep substructure can be seen. The Delaware Basin is rich in oil and gas, trapped along underground cracks or fault lines. The basin is set like a tilted dish, most of the fault lines buried miles below, with only the western rim of the rocks above ground, topped by El Capitan Peak.
When we first saw the space photographs, we found out that we had been looking through a glass darkly, interpreting all of this collective evidence, this minute detail, which is necessary for any proper geologic investigation. But when we found the space photograph, we found we can see the big picture, the major structures, and how they relate one to the other. It's been said that it can be likened to a fly walking on the face of the Mona Lisa, and it's not until that fly lifts off and looks back till it knows what it's been looking at.
Space photographs are becoming another tool in our search for new energy from our own planet. This is just the beginning.
For petroleum and natural gas, the value, I believe, will be incalculable. While we're studying the moon and all of the wonders of its surface, I think we need to turn around and take a look back at the Earth. I think the value of space photography is immense.
New sources of energy, new sources of food. From this space photo made from Gemini 4 in 1965, a great new promise comes to fishermen along the Florida Keys and better understanding of ocean currents. What has the sweep of the seas to do with feeding the world's growing population? Just watch.
That door's jammed right there. Hurry, go on. Hey, George, run there and get some buoy bound. Get on this buoy here.
Shrimp processing is the largest seafood industry in the United States. In season, scores of small boats dot the Gulf of Mexico and Atlantic waters, groping with their nets for where shrimp used to be, ought to be, or just might be. It is tough, bone-tiring work, and as the demand for shrimp has grown, methods to increase the supply have failed.
Help him there, man.
There is a vast area of the Gulf known as Upper Florida Bay, which looks ideal for shrimp to grow in. But they do not. Some said that the waters actually caused baby shrimp to die. One Gemini photograph dispelled the myth, showed how the ocean currents swept baby shrimp from their spawning grounds into Lower Florida Bay, but not into the Upper Bay. Dr. Robert Stevenson of the Bureau of Commercial Fisheries.
In this photograph, we see a large eddy, some 45 miles in diameter, which peels the water off from the Florida current into the Florida bays, and by this mechanism we realized why the shrimp or how they came into the bays.
So the view from space revealed that the ocean current was the villain of Upper Florida Bay, and work has now begun towards seeding the upper bay with young shrimp. Pregnant females caught in the fishing grounds are brought to the laboratory where they live until they release their hundreds of thousands of eggs. When the baby shrimp reach the post-larval stage, they are siphoned out of the tanks and experimentally planted in the waters of Upper Florida Bay. After a matter of weeks, they will begin migrating to deep water, increasing the potential catch. From one space photograph has come the promise to a nursery and greatly expanding the sources of food. Happening here can occur in many other areas of the world. Off the waters of Asia and Africa, there are potential spawning grounds for shrimp and other sea life, if man can only see them from space. In the years just ahead, for the views from space will be to help men solve the problem of hunger by understanding the sea. The sea and the land. In the past, aerial photographs of the United States have been taken by the thousands. A coast-to-coast map of the nation from aircraft would take 10 years and $12 million. But in a single test, a Gemini spacecraft provided the basis for a photo map of a wide area of the Southwest in 10 minutes. Now being tested for satellite use are new cameras and other sensing devices from airplanes. What may we see in 1970? Well, for one thing, we could begin to map water supplies from melting snows. This photo shows what appears to be a huge glacier here in white. But with infrared photography, much of the glacier proves to be snow-covered vegetation, dark shades. Views like this from space could help provide us with more accurate water estimates. Or look again. Think how a census of crops could benefit an overpopulated world. This photo gives information for such a census. This is a field of cotton, seen on the aircraft's infrared film. Due to poor irrigation, some of the cotton is sickly, providing a smaller yield. Number 1 shows healthy cotton. Number 2 is poorly irrigated. Nothing grows in number 3. A space watch could reduce disaster to crops. This infrared picture shows a wide swath of dead trees at the top, threatening the entire forest. Early warnings could cut the annual $20 billion crop loss in the United States alone. The view from space can be a window against other disasters. This is a part of central China, often ravaged by flood and famine. Through space sensing, such inaccessible regions could be monitored. Many details can be made out by experts from this space photograph: the conditions of the roads and railroads, the rivers and flood areas, farms, and erosion.
The whole program is really geared to benefit the average citizen of this country and perhaps of other countries as well. It's his dividend, I think, for the expenditures we've made in the space program. It'll mean more food, it'll mean adequate water, good clean water. It'll mean that he will have the recreational resources that he needs to enjoy life when we have more leisure to enjoy. So we have an obligation to explore and to develop, and space can help us do it.
The world lies at our feet, 22,000 miles below. Much of it unknown. Its riches waiting to be discovered with views from space.